This topic covers the Spirent TestCenter Automation Architecture Overview. The Spirent TestCenter Automation Architecture Overview will present key elements and concepts regarding your scripting environment.
The Spirent TestCenter Automation API elements are supported by TCL, Python, Perl, C, and C++, C#, Java, and Ruby.
A Spirent TestCenter Automation API script consists of objects, which can be broken down into test configuration objects, protocol data unit objects, and command objects, as well as functions. We will discuss object handles and attributes in greater detail later in this topic. However, for the time being, recognize that Spirent TestCenter Automation API objects are identified via handles, and they possess attributes that describe the properties of the object. An object handle is an entity that uniquely identifies a Spirent TestCenter Automation object. Object handles are links between your application and the Spirent TestCenter Automation object hierarchy. In order for you to access a particular object that you create, you will have to identify it by the handle, and then you'll be able to retrieve information, or you will be able to change an attribute if you would like. Object attributes specify the characteristics of an object. For example, the fixed frame length attribute of the stream block object will specify the number of bytes in a frame. When you create a Spirent TestCenter script, you will configure test configuration objects. Test configuration objects describe the components of your test configuration. They're going to provide the data that Spirent TestCenter needs to create and run a test. They include items such as projects, hosts, ports, stream blocks, VLANs, routers. When you create your scripts, the documentation will become your friend. On the slide, we are showing you the test configuration object index of the Spirent TestCenter Automation Object Reference document. This is going to contain the description, the syntax, attributes that are available to the test configuration object that you will use when you're going to configure test configuration objects. Remember, it's a PDF document, therefore you can view it online, it's bookmarked, it's linked, so you can retrieve information quickly and easily. We have displayed this diagram previously within this course. It is a partial test configuration object hierarchy, meaning that not all possible test configuration objects are being displayed. However, some of the key or core test configuration objects are being displayed here in this diagram. You start with the system. Every script you're going to create has to have a system, and that's by default. You will then create a project, and then underneath that project, you will have ports, which would then you will define a generator, an analyzer, and a capture. Actually, it will be automatically defined for you, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you'll have things, you'll see the host or the router, the devices are off of the project and not off of the port. The whole idea is that you're going to have a parent type of object and then a child object underneath it. These are all test configuration objects. You're going to configure them, and then we're going to perform certain actions on those objects. This slide displays the port object documentation as viewed from the Spirent TestCenter Automation Object Reference document. We were looking at the port object. You will see it defines the parent, which in this case is the project. It defines children, and you'll see one we've highlighted as a stream block. But then you'll notice that there is an automatically created children, and you'll see that we've highlighted 3 of them for you: the analyzer, the capture, and the generator. That means that when you create a port object, the system will automatically create related children off of that port, 3 of them being the analyzer, the capture, and the generator. The second object is a protocol data unit. If you are going to create a script using the Spirent TestCenter Automation API, you may or you may not configure these PDUs. It is basically a single collection of attributes that define protocol traffic, and you'll see some of the protocol data unit objects include Ethernet 2 or IP or TCP. It's just a method to help you define your traffic. But once again, you do not have to utilize these, where within the test configuration objects, you will have to specify and create those. The PDUs, it's an optional object that you may or may not use in your test development process. Once again, we are in the Spirent TestCenter Automation Object Reference document, only now we are selecting the Protocol Data Unit Objects Index. While this may seem very simple, it's key to start to identify which document you need to gather information about your script, because they're not always going to be all in one document.
We are looking at the TCP object example within the documentation. Notice it has a parent of stream block and no children. By using the documentation, you can identify the TCP attributes that you can configure for a test. The third type of objects are command objects. Within a script using the Spirent TestCenter Automation API, you may configure command objects, but more than likely you will. Why? Because they define test actions, such as starting protocol, capturing start, learning start, starting the analyzer, starting the generator. When you select the sequencer and you select a command, when you generate that sequence with the GUI to script, it will use these commands. Now, you can also use these commands, for example, start protocol, without the start protocol command. Either one of them will work within a script that you develop manually that doesn't use the command sequencer.
We're in the same document, the Spirent TestCenter Automation Object Reference, only now we're looking at the Command Objects Index. And it will have the list of all of the commands that you can use. Here we're looking at the generator start command object. The description, a parent, attributes that are going to be defined within this command. We talked about the three types of objects, things you're going to use to configure your test, and then the objects you will use to run the test.
Thank you. This completes this video presentation.